And I'm going to, oh, and I just started recording. There will be a recording available about this specific information available to you on YouTube. It takes my computer a little bit of time to process it, and if I have to do any edits, it takes a little bit more time. But you should probably get that link either this afternoon or sometime tomorrow with the recording, so you can go back once you get your student work to evaluate. You can come back to this recording and look at that specific information if you want to refresh yourself. The first two steps you've probably already done on the Innovation Portal. The first one will happen automatically when you visit the Innovation Portal. It'll check your browser that you use. The Innovation Portal makes use of some pretty advanced technologies with HTML, so we want to make sure your browser is up to date. You can do that by visiting whatismybrowser.com, and it'll let you know if you have the most updated version of your browser. Also, the Innovation Portal will check automatically the first time you visit to see if your browser is up to date and will work and is compatible with the Innovation Portal. The second step is to create an Innovation Portal account. This account is not unique to you as a judge. It's every single account is the same, even mine as an administrator. And then what we do is handle permissions underneath that account creation. So there's no special button to click that says I'm a judge initially. We handle that after you create the account. So the first step is to create the account. You can do that publicly online. Every account is free on the Innovation Portal. You can create it. All you have to do is verify a valid email address, and it should allow you to create that account. The second step is getting it connected to the competition. That's handling that permission on the second level. To get that permission, I think most of you have already done this, is send the exact email address that you used to register on the Innovation Portal to Dr. Schultz, and I'll share his email with you in the next slide. And then he can send an invitation to you to be a judge to that competition and connect your account to the actual Wisconsin competition. So if you do the competition again, next year, if you judge again, you'll be utilizing that same account. And if you happen to want to judge for another competition that's in maybe another state or somewhere else, you'd use the same Innovation Portal account that you create that first time. So then we'll be covering an overview of how the online system works. I'll show you how to access portfolios once they're assigned to you. Student work is happening in a year-long engineering design and development course, kind of a capstone course for the engineering pathway, also biomedical pathway. They have a separate capstone course called BI, but either one can submit to this competition. So year-long project that students work on to create something, to go through the engineering design process to create a new product or new process or create something. We're really evaluating their portfolios based on how they follow the process and the process that they've learned. Not necessarily the results or how innovative their idea is, but we really do want you to focus on how they step through that process. And so we've created this tool, the Innovation Portal, to help you do that as judges. So I'll show you how to access those portfolios. They're not assigned to you yet, but will be shortly. The fifth step that we're going to cover is about the rubric you'll be using. That's that rubric that you use to evaluate student design work through a process. I'll show you how to access that rubric on the Innovation Portal. I'll show you how to access some scored examples as a pretty neat judging resource we have available to you as judges. I know sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to calibrate yourself to evaluating student work in a virtual platform because you only have access to the few projects that you're going to be evaluating. And if you think to a science fair analogy, once you walk into the room, you'd be able to kind of walk around and get a sense for the quality of the projects and kind of what all those students are doing and what the expectations are. That's not really possible on a virtual platform. So what we've done for you is created some scored examples to help you set that calibration and really dive into detail about using the rubric contained within the Innovation Portal to help you come up with the evaluation, help you set that baseline for what the student work should look like. The last step I'll show you how to do is submit your scores to Dr. Schultz, and that judging will be due July 15th, and I think you will be getting your portfolios in about a week. I think June 8th is the day that we're going to have all the portfolios into your account. So right now we're just getting you connected to the account, and then June 8th is that magic time when you'll get the access to the student work, because right now the students are working on that work, and you'll get an alert through email and on the Innovation Portal when we do that assignment, and probably another email separate as well. I want to jump back one more. If you have any problems during your judging experience, if it's anything technical, you can go ahead and send me an email, emork@pltw.org. If it's anything more specific to the competition, I'm somewhat knowledgeable on that, but the real point of contact will be Dr. Schultz to handle those questions specific to the Wisconsin competition. And there's his email right there, center of the page where my cursor is there, schultzj@msoe.edu. So this is the steps to get connected to the competition, which hopefully most of you have already done and accepted invitations. The first step is to create the account on the innovation portal. Second is to report the email address that you used, and that's as simple as just sending an email to Dr. Schultz and let him know what email you used to create the account. It could be personal, it could be work. It doesn't really matter to us, but as long as you tell us what email you used to make that account with. The third step is to look for your invitation. You'll receive an alert on the platform that is Innovation Portal. I'll show you where those notifications are, but you also should receive a push email notification to let you know that you've been invited to be a judge in the Wisconsin competition. There's a very small number of users with specific organizations that do a lot of really heavy email filtering where you might not receive that email. If that is the case, just let me know and I can send you the instructions for finding the invitation and accepting it within the Innovation Portal. But that's what we found is that's less than 5% of users and typically focuses on higher education schools with EDU email addresses. So the fourth step is to accept that invitation, and that's going into the Innovation Portal, clicking accept, or clicking the email that you received to accept the invitation. The one point I want to share with you that has caused confusion in the past is if you click on that email link to accept the invitation, it's a one-time use email link. So if you click it again, you'll receive a 404 error on the Innovation Portal. It won't do anything and it'll look like it has an error. The reason why it's erroring is that we only allow that link to work once. So once you've accepted it, you've already accepted it, you don't need to accept it again. And so that link goes dead and dies. So if you see a 404 error when you click that invitation email, that means you're probably already a judge and you've accepted it. So a pretty quick overview of the competition in the Innovation Portal and how showing you kind of what your role is within this competition. On the left-hand side, we have a bunch of students and student teams. The first step that they went through is to register, and they did that quite a bit ago. Registered their interest in the competition, and what that does is give the competition administrator, in this case Dr. Schultz, an idea of how large the competition will be, and then at that point he can start recruiting some judges. And so that's what has been happening the past month or so. You may have gotten emails from Patricia or been asked to volunteer, and so we kind of knew how many judges to recruit because we had the registration numbers from the students. We typically want the number of judges to match the number of portfolios we receive because we want each portfolio to receive at least 3 reviews, and we want to limit the ask to judges to between 3 and 5 portfolios to review. So if you do the math, that's about even numbers of judges to portfolios, and so the registration phase lets us know how big the competition is going to be. So then we have the submission window. Students register and then they go do their work, and that work has been occurring throughout the school year. They've gone through a pretty extensive process in EDD and worked through the engineering design process, all through ideation to prototyping, to some final reflections and looking back on the Innovation Portal. But when they have that all done and they've completed all their work, the last step is to actually submit a copy of their work, of their portfolio, into the competition, and that is the submission phase. That window for the Wisconsin competition is open from May 9th to June 5th, and so I think they have 4 more days, so we'll see that spike in traffic near the end of it. But that's why you won't see any student work until we have a day or two to make sure we have all the student submissions in and then distribute them out to judges. And I think that's going to go out on June 8th. So that's why when you log in right now, you won't see a lot of content or any student content because the students are still working on that right now. But they'll go ahead and submit their portfolios. There's going to be a lot of portfolios in the competition. So students take a copy of their portfolio and put a copy in as a submission into the competition. So that is the Wisconsin competition. At that point, the competition administrator, Dr. Schultz, will see all the different student submissions and then make a determination on who gets to evaluate what portfolio. And actually, most of that process is fairly automated. On June 8th, we'll click a magic button that takes 3 portfolios, somewhere between 3 and 5, and says, here you go, judge. These are the 3 that you should be evaluating. and does that in an automatic process. It's kind of random. And one thing I want to mention there is that you could receive the 3 best scoring portfolios or the 3 worst scoring portfolios as your assignment. And so there's no requirement that there has to be a spread in scores when you actually score them. They could all be pretty high. They all could be pretty low. What we're looking to do is judge the students on the process and how they followed the process, and judge them based on the rubric and the baseline set in the rubric, not necessarily against each other. So all of those are going to be distributed out to all the judges. You're all going to have between 3 and 5 portfolios to review. You'll have a period of time, in this case, competition has a pretty large window for judges to actually do that evaluation. About June 8th to about July 15th. July 15th will be the date that the evaluations are due back to Dr. Schultz, the competition administrator. And the reason why there's a due date there is that we need to know who wins. So the competition, the innovation portal will automatically rank the competition portfolios as they come in, and then once they're all complete, it'll rank the top 3, top 5, the first ranked one all the way down to the lowest scored one, and then they'll be able to take the top scoring ones. And I think for the Wisconsin competition, they take the top 5 into another scoring process, but don't quote me on that because that's really more of a question for Dr. Schultz and how they structure that in Wisconsin. But what you need to know as a judge is July 15th. The scores are due back to the competition administrator, and I'm going to show you how to do that. That work of students working on the portfolio, I want to tell you a little bit about that to give you some context. Anyone can create a portfolio on the Innovation Portal, and what that portfolio is meant to do is really document the engineering design process as you're developing something new or engineering something new. You can create a portfolio to document it. Students can invite project partners. Those project partners, they can have different levels of access, anywhere from just viewing it to reviewing it to collaborating to owning it. And those project partners, there can be any number of them that can either co-own or collaborate on a portfolio. And so group sizes we typically see are somewhere between 2 and 4 students on one portfolio. Students can also invite their teacher. I mentioned that this is an EDD PLTW class, Engineering Design and Development, and Project Lead the Way. So this is a class being offered as a capstone course in Project Lead the Way schools with a teacher teaching the course. That teacher has the ability to view the student work if the student sends an invitation to the teacher as a viewer. Typically, the teacher doesn't have to make edits, and so the student can invite teachers as just as a viewer of the portfolio so they can track and make sure work is being done throughout the school year. And then one of the really neat things, too, is that students can ask project mentors to do reviews of their portfolio. So the exact same review process that you will be doing as a judge in the Wisconsin competition could have been done and probably has been done by students asking their mentors to do a review of their portfolio as a work in progress, gathering feedback through that review process and then making modifications to their portfolio. So it's the exact same process, except you as a judge in a competition are submitting scores to a competition and then ranking more of a final scoring and less of a suggestion on how to do better in the competition. But it's the exact same process. So when all that's happened, the feedback system has happened with teachers and project mentors, students can take their portfolio and submit it to a competition. So that's what they're doing with the Wisconsin competition. And another really neat thing is that they can submit to multiple competitions. The Wisconsin competition is one of the later ones, and so if students were done sooner, they could have submitted to other competitions they're eligible for. I know Illinois does a competition, and we have one international competition with the Conrad Foundation, and so they could have submitted that same work to another competition if they had it done and were eligible for in that time frame. You can also create multiple portfolios. We've had it's digital. It's a digital space, so it's pretty cheap to create more content. So they can create as many portfolios as they want. We've seen students hold these accounts, and the account never expires. Innovation Portal account. They can keep their work in it, and then what they can do is even use it as a portfolio tool when they're applying to college. We've seen students print this out and include it as part of their admissions package, but it really is meant to be a tool for students to use as a portfolio about engineering design work. So they can create as many portfolios as they want with different projects. And at this point, I'm going to step into a click-through on my screen. So we'll hit this slide when I come back to that. and I want to jump into the innovation portal. And at this point, I want to pause for any questions. You're more than welcome to ask any questions in the chat box, and I can take a pause, or I'll be pausing once in a while to take some questions. So if there's any questions so far about kind of general overview and role as a judge and what you'll be doing. All right, I'll take that as no questions, and we can move on. So this is the innovation portal. To go to the innovation portal, just innovationportal.org is the URL. You'll have a login screen. I've already logged in here. The first thing I want to point out is that we have a left-hand sidebar, navigation bar on the left here. The innovation portal dumps you in when logging in first into My Portfolios, and what this page is a summary of all your portfolios. Your login page will probably, your portfolio page will probably look different than mine. I have a bunch of portfolios here that I use for various training purposes and demonstration purposes when I go to a conference or explain to a teacher about how to use it. So I have quite a few portfolios, 46 out of 46 here. You'll probably have 0 unless you've created one. So your screen will look a little bit different. It'll be an orange splash screen and asking you if you want to do something else in the menu. But I did want to point out that you'll start here on the My Portfolios. The first thing I want to click on and show you is My Notifications. This is that area where you'll see notifications. You should receive an email for each notification as well, but this is the place where you can go in to accept the invitation to be a judge, and you'll be notified when you have more content put into your account for student work to evaluate. So this first notification here occurred May 16th, and this is what the notification will look like once you have some student content to evaluate and you have a portfolio to look at. Just say you have been assigned to review this submission. We'll give you the name of it. And then for the opportunity, this is the training example competition, which we'll be using today. But in your case, it will be the 2016 Wisconsin Engineering Design Competition. And then I think if we scroll down, I think the judge notification goes away when you accept it, but this is the same place if you are not yet a judge, you can accept the invitation to be a judge once it's sent in this area right here. So that's the notifications. So then I want to show you opportunities and actually going into the competition to show you how to do some of that work once you have the student design work assigned to you. So this is these are opportunities. We named it opportunities for a particular reason, just because they're not all competitions. We have other things in here like EDD master teachers use one of these competitions. The master teachers use this to share some best practices about EDD design work in the innovation portal, and we have some other things in here. But we have one competition left. Wisconsin is the last one of the season. It's pretty late spring now, or early summer. I think Memorial Day already happened. So we have Wisconsin Engineering Design Competition here, and this is in the current tab. So I want to point out that we're in the current, but once the student submission deadline is over, this competition will be moving into the past. So we see this right now on the current tab, but when you actually have student content loaded into this competition, it will be in this past tab. So I'm going to click that past tab now, and we have a lot more competitions that have already completed here. So this is the 2015 Wisconsin Engineering Design Competition. As soon as the 2016 version comes over here to past, I will make the 2015 one disappear, so you won't see this, but it will look somewhat like this, except the 2016 will be there, and the 2016 will be gone from that current tab. So if you scroll down, you can see all the past competitions that happened in the past year. Minnesota, Oklahoma, Illinois. We had some international competitions, Wisconsin last year. And then this training example. So I'm going to go into this training example just to show you the process. But again, you will be clicking the 2016 Wisconsin Engineering Design Competition and under the past tab. But for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to go into the training example here. There's not a lot of information on this page just because it's a training demonstration, but on the 2016 Wisconsin Engineering Design Competition, there'll be a bunch of information here about judging criteria, prizes that students get, who is eligible, what can be submitted, information here. So you can take a look at that if you'd like to. One key thing that I want to point out here is that if you have this blue bar on top, that means you have special access to the competition. So if you successfully became a judge and accepted the invitation, you will have this blue bar on top like I have here. And you'll have another option that says reviews. So if you want to actually go into the student work after June 8th, you'll be able to click that button and see all the reviews that have been assigned to you. So if we scroll down here, we can see all the reviews. On this account, I have 18 completed reviews out of 21 total. That's quite a few, and that just reflects the number of training examples I've done this spring. For your number, it'll be somewhere between 5 and 7 portfolios for you to evaluate. Each one takes about an hour. What we hear back from judges is that the first one takes a little bit over an hour because you're getting familiar with the rubric. You're reading those scored examples, and it's just a little bit slower for the first one as you're learning it. Then each one afterwards takes a little bit under an hour. So for 3 to 5 portfolios, we estimate about 3 to 5 hours of work total. And that's maybe a little bit on the high side of the estimation. It depends a lot on the student content and how much they load in there. If you have some students don't complete everything, and those can be done pretty quickly because you have less to evaluate. But the really lengthy good portfolios sometimes take a little bit more than that. So there'll be some variability there, but that's a rough estimation. So if we scroll down and look at the first submission that we can take a look at, this new carbon anode one, we can see the status is complete. That means I've already done it. So once you've done a review and sent it in, it will have the complete tag here. So to find one that's not complete, we're going to scroll down here and find one that is active. There's quite a few here. All right, here we go. So 041 dual shoulder camera mount. We're going to go into this portfolio, and this is just a sample portfolio that we've used in the past. So the first place that we get here is the portfolio cover page. And so that's what I'm scrolling with my scroll wheel here, and also there's a scroll bar on the right-hand side that you can use to scroll up and down. The portfolio cover page is kind of whatever the student wants to put there. There's no real content to evaluate on this page. I liken this right-hand sidebar and the portfolio to a 3-ring binder. That's kind of what it was built around. And so each letter, each element of the rubric, A through N, is like a tab of content that you can flip to within the 3-ring binder. And then the portfolio cover page is kind of like that plastic insert in the front that you can use to put whatever content you really want there. It can be pictures of the students. It could be their executive summary. It could be a logo of the fictional company that they're putting together. It can be pretty much anything they want. So, but there's nothing to evaluate there, so we can go to the first element, which is A, presentation and justification of the problem. And at this point, I kind of want to take a little bit of a pause and let you know where this rubric came from. This rubric was the result of a problem that EDD master teachers had all around the nation of having a common rubric to evaluate engineering design work. If you can kind of liken this rubric in the engineering design process, the definition of it, kind of to the scientific process. If you see the scientific process, it's fairly standardized, and then the evaluation of it is also fairly standardized. EDD master teachers saw that they didn't really have the same tool for engineering design work. And so what came of that is a collaborative effort from several universities, and what happened is a 3-year NSF grant led by the University of Maryland, Dr. Lee Apps. And so what they did is they brought in a bunch of engineering educators and university researchers all around engineering education, and came up with a rubric, and defined that engineering design process and built a rubric around it. What you see here in front of us is the result of those 3 years of work, putting together this rubric, several meetings of all evaluating engineering design work and trying to come up with a common rubric that could be used around the nation. Some pretty advanced, a lot of work here, and a lot of really good information that they've given us as evaluators to use now. So this is the rubric they came up with. There's 14 different elements. Starts with presentation and justification of the problem, and steps through different stages that they've defined. We have a couple different components to use during the evaluation of engineering design work here. The first one that I like to point out are the reflective questions. When I'm showing a student or a teacher how to use this, I call this the checklist of what to do. As a judge, it's more of giving you the scope of what should be done in this element and what should not be done in this element. So if you read through these questions, it's not too much text. It kind of gives you an idea of what will be covered and what won't be covered on this specific element. And what we ask you to do is only evaluate this element based on content that the students loaded in this specific element. So keeping the rubric aligned to the rubric of element A aligned to the content in element A within each student submission. So you can read through those and kind of get an idea of what this element A will be covering. If we close that with the arrow there, then we get to the element rubric. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the rubric. We have different scores. Starting at 5 is the highest score you can possibly get, and then a description text of what it takes to get a 5. One thing to point out here is that 5 is not perfection, but 5 is defined as the text there. So that's kind of a difference. Is 5 is not perfect, but 5 is at some point on a scale from worst to best. At some point on the scale, this is the definition of what a 5 should get, and so it's to get a score of 5, the student should do what this text describes, not what perfection is. And then if we click 4, we can see a different text that relates to the score of 4 for this specific element, 3, 2, 1, and all the way down to 0. So we can read that and kind of get an idea of what needs to be done. The text will change on each one. One of the really, really cool things that you have as a judge, and as students actually have the exact same thing available to them, but you have a scored element example. So this button down here. Before I click this, I want you to direct your attention to the upper left-hand part of my screen. A new tab is going to open up, and I want you to see what happens. So when I click that, we're looking at a PDF file now. My computer automatically opened up a new tab and opened the PDF. Depending on how your browser settings are set, you may download a PDF file, you may open a new tab and not go to it automatically, but whatever happens, you're going to have a PDF file available to you. And this is really neat because it sets our baseline as a judge and gives you a bunch of really in-depth thought process into what those engineering educators were thinking when they evaluated this specific piece of student content. So what's neat is that we have student content loaded here. I'm scrolling with my wheel again here. This is specific student content that was evaluated by all those researchers, and we have the score. So this student content right here got a score of 3 for this specific element A, and these two paragraphs are the ideas and the justification for why that score is a 3. So why it is a 3, why it's not a 4, why it's not a 2, specifically a 3, and the thought process that goes behind it. I think this one actually did consider it close to a score of 4, but it's not quite meet the 4. But some of the evaluators hit a 4, so it's not a perfect science, but it gives you a pretty good idea of what it should be. So if we scroll down, we see the entire rubric, 5 different components and 14 elements loaded here. This piece of this PDF is only relevant to element A, just this first element here that we're covering. If we scroll down further, we see the scores ranging from 5 to 0, and then this is only relevant for score 3, this document. So we scroll down, then we see the actual student work. So this is the actual student work that got a score 3. We have this as a PDF printout of the Innovation Portal, and we can see what actual student work got that score. So pretty neat resource to use as a judge. And if I scroll down, you can see that this project was all about LED traffic light bulbs. Apparently when you had incandescent bulbs, it would melt snow and ice, but it would waste energy. So the city moved to LED lights, and they saved money on the energy, but then they had to spend money clearing off LED lights because they were too efficient, and that waste energy was actually not really being wasted in northern climates. It was melting snow and ice so drivers could see the lights. So pretty neat problem that they were defining here in element A. And I think a real good solution is still outstanding. So if you have a good idea, you might get rich selling traffic light bulbs. So that's a really neat resource that you have available to yourself as a judge. So we're going to bounce back over to this actual student, this example here. So you're going to be judging this student work and figuring out what score it should get. Should it get a score of 3? Should it get a 4? If you're in between, you can look at both the examples and kind of see what score they should be getting. And then I do want to, this is one point I want to stress because most judges, this is one point where they can get confused. By clicking these buttons here, you are not assigning a score. You are only reviewing the score. You only reviewing the description text. So nothing I click here is actually being saved in the Innovation Portal. as a judge evaluating this. If I want to actually load the score and I decide that this should be a score of 3, the way that I do that is actually move my mouse to the left so that it closes that right-hand pop-out sidebar, and then go down to this blue icon in the bottom right. And this is your actual score sheet. So going back to that science fair analogy, we went into the science fair, and now we're going to evaluate the 3 science fair projects that we have. This is your clipboard as a judge, that you carry the clipboard around with your score sheets. So this is where you actually put down your comments and you put down your scores, and then eventually what will happen is this will go to a scorekeeper for the entire competition. And so that's what this is right here. This is your clipboard where you actually can put the scores, and at this point it'll save your scores. So we said that this is score 3. At this point, we could maybe think, well, it might be a 4, maybe not 3. If we click this plus button, we can open up another view of the rubric, and then click over 3 and 4, and we can move that around and try to read different components. But it gets a little bit complicated sometimes, and with screen real estate, kind of gets a little cluttered. So you can also close that there with the X button. But let's say we did think this student content up here should get a score 3. So we click that 3, and then we can also write a comment. So we can put a comment in here. Here is a comment. So 2 things on this is, the first one is that everything is saved automatically, so there's no save button. Every couple microseconds, the Innovation Portal is saving automatically, so there is no save button for you to click as a judge. It's already saved. It'll stay there. The second thing about comments is that your comments will be utilized a couple different ways. At least 3 different ways your comments will be utilized. The first one is it can be provided to students and teachers as feedback. What we typically see, and it's at the discretion of the competition administrator, so really Dr. Schultz will have the real answer on this, what will happen, but typically what I see is that your comments are provided to teachers who then can use discretion whether that's a constructive thing to give to students or not. And the reason we do that is just the teachers have a lot more context in the classroom about what should be shared and what is not constructive feedback. So, but that's one way, feedback to students and teachers. Second way is in an event of really close scores, and especially near the top, your comments can be used as a tiebreaker. So sometimes scores of portfolios get really, really close, and the difference matters in the scoring. And so what the competition administrator can do is dive into the comments for the evaluations that happen on each one and kind of see whether it should be bumped up or maybe pushed down a little bit in score and used as a tiebreaker. The third way that your comments can be used is I mentioned the research coming out of the University of Maryland and creating this rubric, and there's really a whole collective of people and organizations that are around the development of this rubric. There's current ongoing research about how judges like yourself utilize the training resources available and utilize the rubric and the training resources to come up with scoring. And so what they're looking at is, given the same content, to do 2 judges with the same training or different training come up with the same score for the same student content. And so they're doing some research and looking into that. And they have a process that they can use to look at the comments to understand what portion of the rubric that you're keying in on to justify the score that you've put into each element, and to help understand and gain some insight into your thought process when doing the evaluation, and maybe explain differences between scores with the same student content. So those are the 3 ways the comments can be utilized. So they are optional, but they will be utilized in those 3 ways if you choose to provide them. Any questions on comments or scoring or anything like that? I want to take a quick pause. All right, quiet group today. Element A. So, one thing I didn't mention about the scoring. The difference between a 0 and a 1 and a 1 and a 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 4 and 5 should be the same amount, so it's linear. So there shouldn't be bigger steps between 3 and 4 than there is between 1 and 2. So it should be fairly linear, and that's kind of the hard part about developing a rubric. So it's kind of like a staircase. Each staircase is the same size. The way that it's not like a staircase, however, is that you don't have to get all the way to the level of a 3 to receive a score of 3. So it is linear, but best fit linear. So if the score is somewhat between a 3 and a 4, let's say it's right pretty much in the borderline between that. We're looking at the description and the scored element examples. It's somewhere between a 3 and a 4. Your job as a judge, and a pretty difficult job, is to determine, is it closer to a 3 or is it closer to a 4? It doesn't necessarily have to meet all requirements of a 4 to receive a score of 4. So you don't automatically round down. It's the best fit. And that's kind of a detailed thing, but something that the rubric specialists have asked me to let you know as judges. All right, so moving on, we have the score of 3. We put a comment in here. We can close our clipboard or our score sheet by clicking that down arrow there and then loading the next element. I'm going to element B, which is all about the documentation of other people's work and doing that research. So if you're engineering and designing something, you kind of have to research patents to see if someone else has done it already. So that's what this step is all about. We can look at those reflective questions, that there's different content, and it kind of gives you the scope of what will be covered. We can look at the scores, read those, and figure out what fits better. Maybe the students did a little bit better, and we think it's going to be a 4. And we have all these scored element examples. I do want to point out, though, that not every single element has scored element examples. The reason being is the last 2 elements are holistic elements, and so there also won't be any student content loaded into M or N, because those two elements refer back to the entire portfolio as a whole. M is about the presentation, and N is about the writing style and writing like an engineer. So these ones are more holistic, look back through all the other content and submit a score appropriately. There's no example because there's no actual content in this specific element. And then I think they may be missing. There's a few ones that we're still missing, maybe like a 5 on J, and that's just because we have in the course of that research, we have access to a limited library of portfolios to use as examples, and in that library, we just haven't seen a 5 for J yet. So there's just a few holes left in the rubric, but for the most part, it's fairly filled out. So this is a B, we thought is a score of 4, so we can open up our score sheet here, submit it a 4, and then write in another comment here. There's another comment. We can close that score sheet out. So we're going to repeat that for each element, going all the way down through N, putting scores in. Once we have them all in, we can hit complete review. So this is not final yet, and what I like to call this page is like the Amazon shopping cart page. It's your last chance to look at everything to verify that everything is done how you want it to be done before you commit to it. So we have the scores on the right. If there's any question marks, that's a key indicator to you as a judge to see that you forgot an element, maybe you clicked past it or something, but a question mark means you haven't loaded a score. And we ask that you do put a score in for each element because I think it registers as a 0 if you don't submit a score for one specific element. And you can also review the comments that you loaded in here. And if there's no comment that you loaded, it just says that there's no comments available for this review. But if we scroll all the way down, all the way through the 15 elements, we have the ability to actually submit this. So going back to that science fair analogy with pieces of paper on a clipboard, this is kind of like taking all those pieces of paper, stuffing them in an envelope. This is like putting the stamp on it and licking it shut, and then dropping it in the mailbox is the complete review. This is the last chance of, this is your committing point. So you're committing to send in the reviews and the scores at this point, and you can't change anything. Anything before this point you can change. So if we go back, actually we can just hit the back button, go back in here, and we have our score of on B is saved as 4. We can close that again, and then A. We can go into that and see that it's saved as a 3. And then if, let's say we forgot C and we thought this should be a 2 and we forgot to put it in there, we can hit 2 and then we can put a comment in that into there as well and close that up. Close that and then complete review again. So you always have the chance to bounce back before finishing up this page. And one thing that judges have told us in the past that they would recommend judges that what they're going to be doing and what they'd recommend new judges to do is don't complete this until you've completed all the reviews, because they can just sit here saved, and then the last step that you need to do is just click this button, click that button, and that can wait until the deadline, maybe July 14th or whenever. Just remember to actually do it. The reason being because you can kind of, your judging will change a little bit as you judge the first portfolio versus the second and third, and you can always go back and then tweak a few things once you've learned more about the rubric, and leaving that option available to yourself is kind of useful to judges. Some judges even evaluate all of them that they've been assigned, so maybe 3 or 5 portfolios, all A, then all B, all C, all D, all E, all F. Sometimes judges do that as well. So, but let's say we have all this done, we're ready to actually submit. We can click the I understand, wish to complete the review, and then click complete review. And this is like dropping it in the mail. We've committed, and this button needs to be clicked by July 15th, and that's the deadline to get the scores in. All right, so we've clicked that button, we've sent the scores in. We're on a new pane on the navigation on the left here called My Reviews. And what this page is a summary of every single review that you've done. So all the ones for the competition, this specific competition are here. And then if you ever judge again, it'll be all the same. You'll still have all the same reviews available to yourself. You can see all the work that you've already done. So you as a judge will always have access to all the work that you've done as a judge. You'll also have access, if you've worked as a mentor to help any of the teams, to actually provide that mentorship. Before they've submitted, your reviews will live here as well. So on this account, I have 29 of 29, and then I can sort by active and complete. Active means it's not done. Complete means I have it done. We just worked on the 41 dual shoulder camera mount, and so we have the tag of complete here. If we click this, and this is what I was talking about, you still have access to it. We still have access to that student work. This is a portfolio cover page again, and to actually go to content that's evaluated, we can go to A, see that student content, but we don't have that blue button here on the bottom right. That means we can't submit a score for this element. We can, however, click Review Summary and see what we did submit as the score. So we can see our score for A. We just can't change it at this point. And that's in the My Reviews. I do suggest, though, that the next step that we do is go do another portfolio, go into another one and do that. So I want to show you how to find that again within to find the actual competition. We click Opportunities on the left-hand side, and again, this is current. We have the 2016 Wisconsin Engineering Design Competition here as current. It will not be here once you have content loaded in to evaluate. It'll be in the Past button here. And this is a 2015 example, but it'll be 2016. Once the students have submitted their work, go into Training Example for the purposes of this training today, and then click Reviews. And these are only the reviews relevant to this competition. So kind of, if you have other stuff in your account, you can limit the view to only the competition you're currently judging by going into this way. And then I think I had 18 before, now I have 19 complete out of the 21. And again, you'll have much less than that, somewhere between 5 and 7. Scroll down, find our dual shoulder camera mount, and see that the tag is now complete. So we're done. The next step is to find another active one. Looks like here's another active one that needs to be evaluated. We can click on that and then start evaluating the next piece of student work in here. And again, on the cover page, and then going A through N, repeating the same thing. So at this point, I want to stop and take any questions before I jump back into the PowerPoint. If there's anything about the interface, where to click, any questions? All right. I hope I'm not muted right now. Okay. So that was the last step on the. Great. Thank you, Benjamin. Sometimes I wonder if I didn't unmute. So that's the last step through the click through. Note that you'll get a link to a recording of this exact training that you've been in to click through. So if I know you won't have the portfolios for another week, and so it might be a little bit difficult to refresh yourself and learn exactly where all the buttons are. But if you have any questions, you can always scroll to that point in the training. And the training will maybe jog your memory, and it's a little bit further, a little bit less, but you'll have that recording available to yourself on YouTube to kind of scroll in and refresh yourself there. The last thing I want to talk about are 3 documents that you'll be receiving from either myself or Dr. Schultz. We have 3 documents. You may have already received 2 of them. The first is a PDF step-by-step guide for judges, and it kind of walks through some of the click-through that we did today, but it's mostly about how to log in and then get to the portfolios. Not a whole lot of information on actually how to use the rubric as an evaluation tool and how to have the best possible consistent score as a judge. The second one are the reflective questions and kind of a summary of the rubric. So it'll have, for each element, those 14 elements, A through N, it'll have the reflective questions, and it will have the description for only the score of 5. So that's a kind of a summary of the rubric, stepping through each element, so it kind of gives you an idea of what the rubric is. And you may have already received those 2 documents. The last one I hope you haven't received, because I normally recommend competition administrators to not send it until after this training, because it's super long. It's very long because it's the entire rubric that is embedded on the right-hand side of the innovation portal when you're viewing a portfolio. And the reason I don't like to send it in advance is because it's really long. You don't have to read it all the way through. What it is helpful for, though, is having it available on a separate monitor screen. If you want to, instead of using that pop-out sidebar, if you want to use this PDF document, you're more than welcome to just view the rubric there. Or if you want to print this out and have it available as you're reviewing student work, so you don't have to use that right-hand sidebar pop-out. And that's just another option for you. We have judges that like to do it either way, but you will have that document, the full PDF version of the rubric, available to you. But you don't need to read it front to back, so we don't send that in advance. But you'll be receiving those 3 documents plus the link to the recording of the training sometime this afternoon or tomorrow. And with that kind of ends the official training. And the last thing I want to let you know is that we appreciate quite a bit what you do as a judge. We don't get very many opportunities to say thank you to the judges on a virtual platform, just because we don't necessarily see you in person. But while we have you here, I want to say thank you. The work that you do for students are allowing a phenomenal opportunity for recognition to students, taking the work that they do in the classroom, some of the best work I've seen in high school engineering work, taking those outside the classroom and really get it recognized on a higher platform. And that higher platform couldn't exist. The competition couldn't exist without the work that you're doing to evaluate the student work. So I just want to say thank you. And with that concludes our training. I'm going to hang on the line here for a few more minutes to answer any one-on-one questions, but I just want to say thank you, and that officially concludes our training. And if there's any questions, I'll hang around. Thank you.